We did an episode, you and I, in 2020 called The Future of Aging for 12 Geniuses. And I'm curious to know what sorts of advances we have made in the last 4 years around these chronic diseases, specifically around cancer and heart disease. And if you want to talk about diabetes and neurodiseases like Alzheimer's, please go for it.
Yeah, well, I think the big hot thing now is these new weight loss drugs, and those came out of nowhere. But they've turned out to be incredibly effective not just in weight loss, but effective against diabetes and against heart disease. And again, that's one of the things that 4 years ago, I'm sure we didn't talk about that because they weren't on the horizon. The other thing that's happened in the last 4 years is that there's been a lot more movement of drugs that were developed in animal models that are now in early stage human trials, particularly this class of drugs called senolytics, which are drugs that kill certain cells in the body that are damaging. And it's something new for us to proceed so quickly from animal trials to human trials. But those have come on fairly quickly, and none of them are quite ready for the clinic yet, but they're certainly on their way. And those drugs should have effects on just about all of the diseases we could mention. The other thing that I think bears mentioning is that there was a slight upside to COVID, and that was the rollout of these mRNA vaccines, because it is quite possible that technology will be useful in coming up with vaccinations against cancer, against Alzheimer's disease, again, a number of other things that are just starting to be explored. And again, 4 years ago, those were not on the horizon. They were on the horizon in terms of infectious diseases, but COVID really accelerated the progress of that. So those are new things that I think are really quite exciting that were not on my radar at least 4 years ago.
I wanted to ask you about the senolytics, and because we had talked about metformin and rapamycin in our first conversation, and I keep seeing these terms coming up in other literature that I'm reading, and this is not my area of expertise by any means, but when you say senolytics, are you talking about things like rapamycin and metformin, or is that a different category?
That is a different category. This is a new category. These are drugs that were specifically targeted at a subpopulation of cells in your body called senescent cells. And those are just cells that no longer do the function that they were supposed to do, but instead they ooze these molecules into your body that are damage the surrounding cells, the surrounding tissue. And for the longest time, we weren't sure if those were really damaging or if they were not. But we now know they clearly are, because if we get rid of them in animals, it improves their health a lot. And so it was very quick that we came up with a half dozen drugs that address those fairly specifically. And this is where you need human trials. It's complicated. These senescent cells are senescent for a reason. That is, these are cells typically that used to divide rigorously. For instance, in your immune system, when you have an immune response, you have to create suddenly a bunch of new immune cells. Well, when those stop dividing, that's protective against cancer, potentially. It's a roadblock to cancer. So we don't necessarily want to get rid of all of them, and we don't want to get rid of them all of the time. It may be that these senolytic drugs, to the extent that they end up addressing many aspects of human health, are something that we would only have to take several times a year, let's say, because once we killed these cells, it would take a while for them to start to build up again. So that's not really the kind of thing that we were thinking of with metformin or rapamycin. Although there are some trials with sort of intermittent doses of rapamycin as well. So no, these are completely new things since our since our last conversation, which I think just shows how, how the field is advancing.